Imagine an AI sitting on the board of directors of a huge corporation. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but it is way closer than you might think. There's just one tiny problem. Our entire legal system, every single law, was written for humans, not for computer code. So, how in the world do we fix that?
Okay, so let's just dive right into this with a scenario that feels like it's just around the corner. We're already building AI systems that are fully capable of working at the very highest levels of a company.
I mean, the technology is practically there. An AI could sift through mountains of market data, keep an eye on performance, even cook up new strategies. But the second you ask it to just, follow the law, you smack right into a fundamental wall.
Right. So a human director totally gets a phrase like act with due diligence. It's a social idea, right? It's all about context and using your professional judgment. But for an AI, that phrase is completely useless. It needs exact mathematical instructions. It needs to know precisely what to measure, what the thresholds are. It's a massive translation gap.
And this quote from researcher A.S. Romanova just nails it. This is the heart of the problem. Our laws are built on this squishy foundation of human interpretation and, frankly, ambiguity. They were never, ever designed to be run by a machine that thinks only in algorithms.
But what's so fascinating is that we've already started to crack this exact same problem, but in a totally different area: self-driving cars.
The key idea here is something called the Operational Design Domain, or ODD for short. It's a term that comes straight out of the auto industry, and it is just brilliant in its simplicity. It's basically the rulebook that tells a self-driving system exactly where and when it's allowed to do its thing.
So an ODD is really just a predefined sandbox. For a car, the rules might be, okay, you can drive yourself, but only during the day, only on these specific highways, only when it's not snowing, and only when the lane markings are super clear. Inside that sandbox, its safety is guaranteed because it understands all the rules perfectly. The moment it goes outside those conditions, a human has to take the wheel.
So here's the big leap. What if we took that exact same sandbox idea and applied it to corporate law? What if we could build a clearly defined operational space for a corporate AI to work in? And this is the central argument from the research paper we're looking at. The solution isn't to try and teach an AI to understand our vague human-centric laws. No, it's to create a dedicated, machine-readable context for it to live inside, just like that ODD for a car. And this just illustrates perfectly how it would work. You'd basically have two versions of the company rulebook. One is the policy we all know, written in plain English for the human board members. The other is a parallel policy written just for the AI, which translates all those vague principles into concrete computational rules. You can think of it like a bilingual contract, with one version for people and one for machines.
So how does this actually play out in the real world? Let's take a big high-level principle, maybe something from the G20/OECD Principles of Corporate Governance, and see how you translate it into something a machine can actually use.
Okay, let's start with this very common corporate principle. For a person, this is pretty straightforward. You go to meetings, you read the reports, you use your gut. For an AI, this is gibberish. What does monitor even mean? How do you define performance?
This is how you translate it. You break it all down into an algorithm. First, you define the exact data sources the AI has to use. No guesswork. Second, you set the frequency. Forget quarterly reviews. We're talking continuous, real-time monitoring. Third, you set up concrete triggers. If this key metric drops by more than 5%, send an alert. And finally, you define the action. Alert this specific human board member using this specific protocol. All that ambiguity just melts away into a clear set of tasks.
And you can just see how this can be applied across the whole board. Fair treatment? Boom. That becomes running specific bias detection algorithms. Complying with legislation? Okay, that means continuously monitoring a predefined list of regulatory data feeds. Even a term as fuzzy as due care can be defined as only process transactions from this specific pre-approved list of sources.
So what does all this mean for the bigger picture? This is about so much more than just one company's internal playbook. This is really about laying the groundwork for the future of law itself.
The vision here is that these little experiments happening inside companies, creating these machine-readable rules, can act as seed crystals. As companies figure out what works, best practices start to emerge. And these tested, practical rule sets could then become the foundation for future government laws that regulate AI on a much, much broader scale.
And to really drive this point home, check out this powerful analogy from the world of transportation.
The fatality risk for cars on public roads is just dramatically higher than it is for trains or planes. So why is that? It's because trains and planes run on dedicated infrastructure. They have tracks and they have air corridors. That infrastructure is what allows them to be both incredibly powerful and incredibly safe.
And that really leaves us with a fundamental choice. Are we going to treat advanced AI like a car and just let it loose to navigate the messy, ambiguous, human-built roads of our current legal system? Or do we treat it like a high-speed train and actually build the dedicated, well-defined tracks it needs to operate at its full potential and to do it safely?
The paper suggests that this parallel system of machine-readable laws is that infrastructure. It's a way to harness the incredible power of AI, not by trying to make it more human, but by giving it the clear, logical, and unambiguous environment that it needs to thrive. And that, well, that's a thought that's definitely worth considering.